Welcome to the Property Podcast, the home of news and debate about building long-term wealth from property investment for beginners and experts alike. And now for your hosts. Before I met them, I thought BTL was a sandwich. It's Rob and Rob.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, episode 007. We're back again for another excellent week of property news and information, and we are now the UK's #1 business podcast. So welcome, you're listening to Rob Bentz, and joining me this week, as always, is the UK property geek, Rob Dix. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, guten Tag. I'm the UK property geek joining you from Berlin this week.
You know, we sold him as a globetrotter, but actually, since week one, he's been in London, so it's about time he got back on his travels. So, not that we didn't enjoy your time in London, but it's good to have you back on the road.
Yeah, I feel like I was letting the side down. I'm glad that for episode 007, I'm becoming the globetrotter, which feels quite appropriate. Okay, so this week, it's the social media episode. We're going to be talking about how you can use Twitter, Facebook, and even some channels that you might not be that familiar with to network with people, to increase your property knowledge, build up your connections, and generally further your property career. It's just like normal networking meetings, but you don't have to leave the house. What's not to love? We're also going to be talking about a news story that's caught our attention this week. And we're going to finish with a resource of the week that we're late recording the podcast because Rob wouldn't stop telling me about it. So he can now tell you all about it and get you as enthused as he is.
This week, make sure, you may have not done this in the past, but make sure you go to the show notes because we're going to rattle off a lot of information this week. People you should be following on social media, things you should be doing on social media. And you might not be able to write it all down quick enough. So if you go to the Property Podcast /7, that's the number 7. That's the Property Podcast /7. Everything that we're going to be talking about over the next 20 minutes, half an hour, you'll be able to get all the information and notes there. So make sure you head over to our website for that. But before we get going, the iTunes support continues and we love you for it. Thank you so much. And a round of applause to the following people who left us some lovely reviews. Neil, at last a property investment education that can be listened to at my leisure. Spanish Water Dog Lover says, very informative and easy listen. I love this podcast. Thank you very much. Bobby says he was lost in the property world of magazines, articles, blogs, internet advice, and the podcast has helped him get clarity. So that's a great review. Thank you, Bobby. Wormster says the two Robs are natural presenters. Why, thank you, Wormster. Oh. And the show flows along lovely. Damo, he says, I'm a property newbie who's researching and about to start investing. And the thing I love about this review is he's actually put a tangible date when he's going to start, which is brilliant. That's a goal. Fantastic. He's going to start in June. And this podcast is helping him with his research. And James Weber says, great show, guys. I've learned so much. Please keep up the good work.
Love that. Absolutely love it. Can't say thank you enough for these comments. It just means so much to us to realise that we're not just a couple of idiots talking into a microphone, but we're actually reaching people and hopefully making a bit of a difference. And I'd like to say thank you as well to everyone who's emailed us over the last few weeks. I know you've had a couple of emails, I've had a couple of emails this week from people as well, and would encourage anyone to do the same. Just get in touch, just to say hello if there's anything you want to know. And you could also leave us a voice message if you've got a question or something that you want to read out and actually get your voice onto the show. You can go to the website, which is thepropertypodcast.com, and there's a little sidebar on there where you can actually record a message straight into your computer and we can play that out on the show.
Yeah, that'll be really good. We've not mentioned that before. It's free to do and it's at the bottom left corner of the website. So you'll see it, there's a little blue tab. If you click on it, press record, give it a couple of minutes just to send it back to us. We'll play it out on the show and it'll be great to hear the voices of some of our listeners rather than just us two every week.
Well, let's get back to us, shall we? That's enough of everyone else. What have you been up to this week, Rob?
A few weeks ago I mentioned I was running the marathon. That didn't actually happen. I've been poorly. I'd like to think that you've not noticed on the podcast I've been down with a bit of a bug and on antibiotics for the best part of 2 weeks. So I had a real core time of the training, which although I sound happy today, I was absolutely devastated at the time. But I've been lucky enough to defer my place, so I'll be able to run it next year and hopefully beat my PB, which I set in New York. So I'll be looking forward to doing that next year. But I did go for a run on the day of the marathon just to be there in spirit with them. Not quite 26 miles, though, I'd like to say.
No, that's awesome. So when you emailed me to say, I could do it, but I want to smash my personal best this year, so I'm going to defer it. It's like, bloody hell, just getting around is enough of an achievement.
It's the competitive streak in me. I don't just set goals in property, I do it outside of it as well. So if I'm going to do it, I want to be competitive on what I've done before. But hey ho, these things happen, and if that's the worst thing that happens to me this year, then it's going to be a great year. And also this week, I've listened to 2 fantastic podcasts on entrepreneur. Well, I've listened to several, but there's 2 that I really just want to send people over to because I think you get a lot of value. Entrepreneur on Fire is the podcast. What happens is it's entrepreneurs are interviewed daily. And the two people who got interviewed recently are Dan and Ian from the Lifestyle Business Podcast. And this might get confusing now. These two guys have a podcast called the Lifestyle Business Podcast, which I safely can say it's Rob and I's favourite podcast by far. But the Entrepreneur on Fire interviewed the two guys who do that podcast. The amount of value and information they gave away on those two podcasts was fantastic. And I was outside in the garden doing some work, listening to them. I actually had to take a pad and pen out with me into the garden. And I was stopping every few minutes, just writing down bits of information. So we'll link to those in the show notes. Well worth a listen. Great podcasts. And then finally, this week, I had a brilliant start to the week because Apple emailed me to say that our podcast is going to be featured on the iTunes store. So we're going to have a big banner with the Property Podcast at the top of iTunes for the main category of podcasts, which is absolutely fantastic. And I have to say, that's not our doing. We're just two guys giving some information and occasional bad joke. It's because of you, thousands of you who are listening, and the fantastic reviews you've given, that Apple has noticed the podcast and wants to promote us alongside other BBC programmes, and The Hobbit, the film, has been featured recently. So we're up there with those guys because of you. So thank you so much. We're blown away by that one. I know we say this every week, but seriously, this is incredible. So I've had a great week and a great start to the week. It's been really good. But Rob, you've had a brilliant week as well, haven't you?
I have. I've been in Berlin. I've been here for a few days and just here for another couple of days. Then we're off to Bulgaria. My wife and I do this ridiculous travel thing where we don't have a home of our own. We've got other properties, but not one where we live, and we spend our time traveling. So we spend some time in London when it's useful for business and for seeing friends and family and stuff. But then we also like to spend a lot of our year on the move, which is why we were in Thailand earlier this year. Now we're spent going around Europe a little bit. But we're in Berlin specifically for a conference where I got to meet the almighty Dan Andrews from the Lifestyle Business Podcast, who Rob was just talking about. A real inspiration to us. And if you listen to it, you'll realise quite how much we rip them off. But yeah, I've just been here learning a ton of stuff, meeting lots of new people and spreading the good word about the Property Podcast. So it's been a fantastic week.
You might feel the vibes come across the podcast that we're on a bit of a high this week. It's been great. So let's have a look at what's been in the news. And we've picked out the Times Rich List, which has just been published as we're recording this. And the Times Rich List is obviously a list of the richest people in the UK. Why have we picked that out? Well, quite a lot of people in that rich list have made their money through property. And in the top 10, 2 have made their money through property investment. As you go through the list, there are many, many more. What's interesting, though, is it tells you how people have made their money. It's important to note that many of those people may have made their money from other means, such as their businesses, but they then transfer their wealth to property. A prime example, and a notable example, would be Alan Sugar. So most people will know him for Amstrad, but the vast majority of his wealth now is not his businesses, it's actually property. Most of his money is in property, and that's where he is increasing his wealth year on year through his property investments. So it's interesting that not only are people making their money through property in the rich list, but actually a lot of people who've now made their money are transferring their wealth into property. Now, why do we mention this? Well, if they're good at making money, then I would suggest that they're not bad people to follow as a strategy. Unfortunately, Rob and I didn't make the list this year, but we'll keep plugging away and see what happens.
It's clearly the numbers are rough, it's inaccurate. We possibly could have edged it in there at the bottom of the list, but, I'll be emailing them later to take that up with them. Even if we are not on quite that scale, I think it's reassuring to see that people who've got tons of money and are kind of investing it in the same way that we're trying to. And it also shows, I think, that you don't necessarily have to be a full-time property investor. If you want to have property as not as a career, but as a store of long-term value and for building your wealth, you can do that as well. You can take whatever you make in your day job and sock it away in property. If you want to be making it your full-time job, then great, but that's just an option.
I think it's great to have that validation. We're still expanding our portfolios. We're not retired. Everybody listening to this property podcast, has either started their portfolio or wants to start. It's great to have that, these people have done well and that's how they're doing it. So it gives you that positive reinforcement to go on and know that you're doing the right thing.
With that in mind, let's move on to talking about our topic of the week this week, which is all about how you can make use of social media to do better in property and get where you want to be more quickly by making use of connections. And we're really looking at this with regard to networking, which is always a valuable thing to do by talking and learning from people who know more than you do. And also just in terms of general education, one of the great things about social media is that people are posting links the whole time. You can see what kind of stuff that the experts are reading and what they've got on their mind, and you can use that to kind of direct your own thinking and see what you should have in mind when you're thinking about your next steps in property. I think it's important to say as well that a lot of people get scared of social media and think that it needs to be something that you need to have a lot of technical expertise for, which it isn't, or that it's going to take up a vast amount of time, which it doesn't need to either. And you can get people who get addicted to it and spend all day posting stuff. But really, if you've just got 5 or 10 minutes a day to spend kind of looking at some of the resources that we're going to mention over the next few minutes, that'll be enough for you to kind of get a feel for what people are talking about and give you a chance to make a few connections with people who might be able to take you a little bit further in your property ambitions. Again, we're going to be going through a load of stuff. There's going to be a lot of links. So if you go and grab the show notes, which are at thepropertypodcast.com/7, you can go there and get hold of everything without having to scribble things frantically down. Rob, shall we start with Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter's a great tool. It's one of those tools that you don't have to be active. You can just set up an account and read what people have to say and just take in their information. If you then decide to participate, then fantastic, but you don't have to. So many people don't. So what you can do is set up your account and then start to follow people who interest you. We're obviously talking about property, but if you have other interests as well, you can do that too. The first people you must always follow on Twitter are Rob and myself. So if you would like to follow Rob, it's at UK Property Geek. That's at UK Property Geek. So it's that at symbol, UK Property Geek. You can find him. And myself is at Rob Bence. That's BENCE at Rob Bence. And then my company, RMP Property. Yeah, you've guessed it. It's at RMP Property. Jump on Twitter and follow us. And if you found us through the podcast, say hello. We don't bite. But there's plenty of other people you can follow too, isn't there, Rob?
I put together a little list of about 50 people who tweet.
A little list.
Yeah.
Just 50.
Just 50 of my favourites. People who are influencers in the property world and talk not exclusively about property, but largely about property. So if you go over to the show notes, there's a link to that list. It's quite complicated to read out the whole URL, but you can just literally follow that list, and that means that you've got 50 people in your stream straight away, and you can just keep an eye on what they're talking about. Because I think a lot of people struggle with Twitter, and they struggle to get any value out of it. And the secret is it's all about who you follow. And so if you're following the right people, you're going to have a constant stream of things throughout the day, of interesting things to read and look into. If you're not following anyone, or you're just following a couple of celebrities or something, there's not going to be anything that's relevant to you. So this list should really help you get off on the right track. So there's people on there like Vanessa, who runs Property Tribes. There's Lisa Orme, who's sort of prolific on talking about mortgage and finance. There's James Davis from UPAD. There's Henry Pryor, who's a big property commentator. There's all kinds of people who are just on there throughout the day, and you can kind of get an insight into what's on their minds.
There's some really good people out there that you should be following. Mark Alexander as well from Property 118. And Graham Norwood, he's a journalist, but some of the stuff he writes is great. So check those out as well. But they're all on the list, so don't worry about writing them all down now. Go and have a look. Click on the link that we'll put in the show notes, and you can start following them straight away. Nice and easy.
The next network that we're going to talk about is LinkedIn. And this is one that I need you to explain to me, because my understanding of it is the way it works is you go through everyone in your address book, you send them a template message asking them to join your professional network, and then you never talk to them ever again. But I suspect that there's something more to it that you can help us out with.
There is. LinkedIn is probably the most intimidating of all the social media platforms you can use. It doesn't have to be, though, because, yes, LinkedIn is the business social media platform, but there are a lot of helpful, friendly people on there that even if you're not in business yourself, you can learn from. Have a look, join it, but what we're about to go through will make it a lot easier for you. When you join LinkedIn, start making connections with people that are of interest to you. So you can type in the keyword box at the top right-hand corner, property investment, and you can then see who's an influencer in that field, and also who's connected to people you know who are influencers in that field as well. So that's the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do is go out and join some groups. Now, again, we'll list them in the show notes. But some of the groups out there are, for example, the UK Below Market Value Property Group, the UK Property Investors Group, the UK Property Investors Networking Group. There's loads, and we'll link to them in the show notes. But you can join those groups and start to get a feel for what's happening in this industry. And it's actually, some of the groups are people who are just in the property investment industry, but it doesn't mean you can't join and just watch what's happening and have a look at what's happening, because you can pick up some great info and great knowledge. There's a couple of things I would say, though, if you're going to use LinkedIn to get the most out of it. If you're going to connect with someone you don't know, if you connect with them, send them a message, because I don't know what your LinkedIn account's like, Rob, but I get daily requests from people I've never met or heard from before. It doesn't mean that they're not good people. They probably are, but they never message me to say, hey, Rob, I'm John. I like what you've done. I'd like to connect with you. I mean, it can be as broad as that, but most people just send the pre-written template, I'd like to connect. And I think that's a missed opportunity, because you can start to open a conversation with someone you want to connect with someone. If I wanted to connect with Rob, for example, I'd say, hey, Rob, I run a company called R&P Property. I see you're the UK property geek. Love what you've done. It'd be great to connect. Now, that would have taken me all of 10 seconds to write, but would instantly open the doors to further conversation with someone you'd like to get talking with. Now, I make sure that every time I request a connection, I write a little bit just about myself and why I'd like to connect with them. And when people write to me and they don't say why they're connected, I'll actually then write back to them and say, hey, thanks for wanting to connect. This is what I do. Why did you want to connect? I like to get to know people first. So it's not trying to be arrogant and go, why are you contacting me? It's actually to try and establish some value early on. So that's a really important and underutilized tip you can do with LinkedIn. And then once you're introduced to people that you like, see who they're connected to and try and connect with them. It snowballs from there. So that's LinkedIn. It can be a great tool. Just make sure you use it right.
You've hit the nail on the head, to be honest. That's the problem that I've had with it, is that I get all these requests from people who I don't know wanting to connect, but they don't say why. And so then I'll add them and they'll either say nothing ever again, or they'll just like spam me with some kind of link or deal or something. And that's difficult. So I think by being proactive and kind of forcing that and trying to establish relationships with people, you're doing the right thing. If someone messaged me and just said, hey, I'm interested in property, this is what I do, maybe we could have a chat sometime, I'd jump at that. It's always great to meet people who are interested in the same stuff. LinkedIn, by default, makes it a kind of a tricky thing to get into, but it's just about like start using it as a platform for starting a conversation like you would at a networking event or anywhere else. Okay, so that's the most intimidating platform, I suppose. And then let's go from there to the one that you're almost certainly most familiar with, which is Facebook. And Facebook is great because everyone's on there already. It's something that you're going to understand how to use. And the real secret, I think, to Facebook is to join a couple of groups. The best of Facebook doesn't happen in your friends' news feeds. It happens in groups of people who are like-minded and have got similar interests. And in the property world, the biggest one is the UK BMV group, and we link to that in the show notes. There are thousands of people in there, but it's very well moderated by the guy who runs it. And it means that even though there are thousands of people, it pretty much stays on track. Like every so often someone will go in there and they'll try and spam it with a deal or something like that, but that gets deleted quite quickly. There are just so many people on there. There's discussions happening every day. There are threads on there that are up to hundreds and hundreds of posts. But it just means that whatever time of day you go on there are people talking about property. Sometimes it's at a pretty high level. It's people asking technical questions about a problem that they're facing in their business right now. Or sometimes it's just like a newbie coming on and saying, hey, I'm in this area, what should I do? It really is for all levels. Again, you don't have to contribute. You don't have to be intimidated. Most of the time, to be honest, I don't post in there. It's not often that I've got something that I specifically need to ask, and I'll contribute if there's something that I'm uniquely placed to give some advice about that. But most of the time I just read. And every day you can just read all these people talking about things, all of whom are using different strategies and different approaches. So there'll be one post about someone like talking about the precise type of kitchen cabinets they use that are hard wearing and last a long time. And then the very next post will be someone who's got a deal that they're trying to make work and structure in a certain way, and so they can finance it as best they can. It's such a range, so you can just sit there, kind of passively absorb it and pick up all these little gems of information, and you never quite know when it's going to come in useful. It's a great way of using a platform that you're very familiar with and just really kind of exposing yourself to the knowledge of thousands of people who are as obsessed with property as you are. And then, Rob, I think you've got a group on there as well, haven't you?
Yeah, it's just a small group that I just put property articles on, so there's not actually discussions going. It's just articles that have caught my attention that I think people would like to enjoy and absorb and read, and that's the UK Property Investment Group. So have a look at that as well. So there's not so much conversation, it's more resources that you can then go on to read. So that's worth joining up as well.
Groups are the secret. You can, of course, befriend people on there as well. Again, the same rules apply as LinkedIn, really. If you're going to try and befriend someone, message them first and sort of say who you are and say why. Some people are very happy, but people in property are generally very happy to just add anyone. They don't tend to keep it as a private thing, but some people keep their Facebook purely for people that they personally know. And you just never know. I'd be sensitive to that and try and strike up a bit of a relationship with people. Message them first before just trying to go mad and add everyone and grow your friend count. So I think they're the big three: Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook, and we're going to put lots of links to help you get the best out of those platforms. But we've got some honourable mentions as well for other networks that can be useful for expanding your property knowledge.
Yes, we have. So the first is YouTube. You may not always consider that as a social network, but it really is, and it's a great channel that you can use to up your knowledge. So just go into YouTube, type in property investment, or if you have a specific question, type that in as well, and you'll be surprised at what comes up. There's some really good information out there. There's a lot of salesy stuff as well, so be careful. But go in, type in your questions, or type in general things like property investment or UK property investment, and see what comes up. You can really pick up a quick education by just putting a few hours aside one weekend and going through everything on YouTube. As I say, be careful, but as long as you take a sensible approach, you can pick up some really good stuff.
There's also a social network that you might not have heard of called Quora. That's Quora, Quora.com. It's a question and answer platform. Like if you've ever seen Yahoo Answers, which you probably have because it always comes up high in search results, it's like that, but not all answered by a bunch of 12-year-olds who don't know anything. It's a question and answer platform for people who are really, really into their subject and contribute really great answers. And it's a totally, totally addictive platform, even away from property. There's this fascinating stuff on there, and I always just kind of look at what's on the homepage and go down these rabbit holes of finding out weird stuff about aeroplanes or hurricanes and stuff like that. There's people are obsessed with stuff on there. But from a property point of view, there are topics that you can follow, and I'll link to some of them. For example, there's a real estate topic, there's a buying a home topic, there's a real estate agents topic. By following those, it just means that when you log in, you get to see all the latest questions and answers that have been posted to those topics. And as you might have guessed from real estate, there's a bit of an American bias to it. Actually, there's a big American bias to it. So a lot of the time people will be talking about things that maybe use slightly different terminology or things that aren't applicable to the UK. But a lot of the principles are the same. And so you can go on there, you can read the answers that other people have written, you could add your own answer, you can ask questions. But again, you don't have to contribute. It's just an interesting way of picking up little tidbits of information from people who are normally really super passionate about their subject. And if there is someone on there who's contributing lots of great stuff and it seems relevant to you, there's a way on there that you can send them a little message and you can strike up a connection with them that way if you want to.
Or if you're one of our many American listeners, obviously that's perfect for you.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate, not just the UK property listeners we cater for. That's one for our American friends there too.
The final network, which I actually love, is Google+. It's one that Google are putting a lot of weight behind. If you use Gmail for your email or you use Google Drive or to store your documents, you possibly have been signed up for a Google Plus profile already, or you at least know what it is. It's kind of their answer to Facebook, really. The problem with Google Plus is that not a lot of people are actively using it at the moment. I think it's a really, really great platform. You can segment people into groups, which it means that you can kind of have a group of people who you talk to about property stuff and a group of people who are like your family or your personal friends. And it means that you're not kind of blasting people with stuff that they're not interested in. I really like how it works. It's just not something that you get anywhere near as much activity on as Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. But there's a couple of groups that I'll link up to. Me and Rob are both on there, so you could always circle us rather than following or friending. You circle people on Google+. I'm sure that's a platform that's going to get more active in years to come. So by just being on there, you can kind of keep an eye on who we're connecting with, and maybe as others arrive, you can add them to your network.
So that's all of our social networks. There's a lot of information there, so grab the show notes on the website. Word of warning for all the above that we've just gone through. Once you start joining these groups, unfortunately, there are always the dodgy characters who come out the woodwork who will start to try and instantly sell you deals or sell you courses. Now, why you should be wary? Well, if they have to resort to pestering people and spamming people on these social networks to try and sell their deals or courses, then are those deals and courses that good? Be careful of people who instantly strike up a conversation and within a minute they're trying to sell you something. I'm always wary of anybody who tries to do that, and so should you be when you join these groups. However, don't let that deter you, because you can get so much more from social media than the negatives that are there. So join some of the groups that we've mentioned, if not all of them. Hit Twitter, hit Facebook, hit LinkedIn, and see how you get on. And if you have success, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
We, as the Property Podcast, are going to make our own steps into social media at some point, but we want your help in deciding where you want us to be, what networks it would be useful for us to have a presence on, so you can connect with us and with other listeners of the podcast. What we're going to do is we're going to be doing a little survey of everyone on our mailing list at some point, so you can kind of vote for where you think it's going to be most useful for that community to take place. So if you're not on our mailing list yet, get on there. Just go to thepropertypodcast.com. There's a little mailing list sign-up form there. We're not going to spam you with loads of stuff. We just send you a weekly email whenever the podcast comes out to make sure you don't miss it. And we'll be doing a little survey to all the people on there. Basically, you can direct where we go next.
So that's our topic of the week. I hope you enjoyed that. And as we mentioned, get on the show notes to get all the information we've covered. But now we're going to look at the resource of the week, which I'm a big fan of. I know we're fans of everything we recommend, but that's the great thing about what we do. We don't just tell you about things that we've never used before. We're using these tools on a weekly basis. And what we're going to tell you about this week is a tool called Trello. Now, I know Rob uses it a little bit, but for once, I seem to be a bit more of a geek on this one and seem to use it for everything in my life.
Yeah, I'm excited to find out all the different things you use it for, because I think I'm just using a fraction of its capability.
So Trello is a to-do list on steroids. It's free, I'll say from the start, so have a look. It's worth downloading or accessing or logging into straight away just to have a play around with it. But it's a series of boards, and I'm going to try and do my best to describe this to you, but you really should go and have a look. And what you can do is you can do anything from your to-do lists, but you can take it so much further. Some of the things I use it for is project management. So my team, some of them are based in the office. So Ed, my designer, every morning I update his board and I give him all the information, and I can attach photos or anything else to that board so he knows exactly what I want from him. Then he gets a notification on his side to say, yes, Rob's updated your board, have a look. So I use it for personal to-do lists in and out of business. I use it for project management, for people in the office and outside the office. I use it for pipelines as well, to see where certain people are up to in their purchasing stage, because obviously there's different stages when you purchase a property, from getting your mortgage approved to going through the conveyancing, and we track that on there as well as our CRM. You can go into so much detail. It's really good. I use it for specialist to-do list templates as well. So every Monday morning, I have a specialist template that loads up. I have one for every other morning. I have an end of week template that I work through, which is just a checklist. But it's already pre-populated because I've saved it. You're going to have to go on this tool to see what it's all about. And what I'd recommend is going on one of the social networks I mentioned earlier, YouTube, and typing in Trello and seeing how different people use it, because it's a lot easier to appreciate this tool visually. The Trello.com, have a look at it, see how you can use it and implement it into your life. Even if you don't have a business, you can use it on your personal life, day-to-day to-do lists. If you upload it on your iPad, for example, it then updates your iPhone or Android phone and your desktop. It's cross-platform as well, which is really useful.
I'm going to be going to YouTube and typing in Trello and seeing how other people use it as well, because I'm not making enough of it. We're both obsessed with systems. At some point, we'll do the systems episode and no one will listen, but we'll have a great time. we do go on about this stuff because the more systematic you can get, it just means you can get so much more done, you can get more efficient, you can make the most of the opportunities that come your way. And by using some of the things we talk about, like Dropbox and Evernote and Trello now, It's just such a great way of using tools that do that and that synchronize across your own devices. So you can just take your Office with you wherever you go.
Yeah, it's great tools. Have a look at them because they really can make a big impact on your life.
We should wrap it up for this week. I think that covers just about everything. I've really enjoyed talking about all this stuff. Again, there's been a lot of information, so everything is in the show notes. While you're over at the website, please do join the mailing list to make sure that you never miss an episode. Another way of making sure you never miss an episode is subscribing on iTunes. If you just come across us for the first time, then hit the subscribe button and you'll get every episode downloaded automatically. It costs you nothing. If you're not sure how to subscribe to iTunes, on our website, we've got a little video that shows you how to do it and shows you how to leave a review as well, if you're so inclined.
Now, next week, we've got a very special episode and more will be revealed, but it's called Property Investment for Beginners. But make sure you join us next week. Even if you're a guru or an expert, you're going to learn something, I promise you. But if you're new to property, this is going to be of massive value to you. I'm really excited about next week's episode, and there's a few reasons for that, but you'll have to tune in to find out why. But it's going to be a really, really good podcast, I promise you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you all next Thursday. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Property Podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes and join the mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.